You can see mental education.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay, Nishi, why don't you read this much?
Of all lines of education, mental education is the most widely known and practiced. Yet, except in a few rare cases, there are gaps which make it something very incomplete and, in the end, quite insufficient. Generally speaking, schooling is considered to be all the mental education that is necessary. And when a child has been made to undergo for a number of years a methodical training which is more like cramming than true schooling, it is considered that whatever is necessary for his mental development has been done. Nothing of the kind. Even conceding that the training is given with due measure and discrimination and does not permanently damage the brain, it cannot impart to the human mind the faculties it needs to become a good and useful instrument. The schooling that is usually given can, at the most, serve as a system of gymnastics to increase the suppleness of the brain. From this standpoint, each branch of human learning represents a special kind of mental gymnastics. And the verbal formulations given to these various branches each constitute a special and well defined language.
Okay, yes, I think it's quite clear. All of us are very familiar with the schooling as it is. Any comments, anything to add or say?
I think earlier when we were doing a lot of real cramming and mental mathematics and tables, we can still say that we were doing mental gymnastics. I think we are not even doing that now.
What are you doing?
Nothing. Passing time.
Well, there are schools which actually, I mean, I would say that in the last, I'm talking of India, uh, in the last 25 years, there have been schools which have come up and which are many more. Earlier, there was only Mirambika, but many more schools have come up which try and do something. But still, like the mother is saying, it is uh, they may not emphasize cramming so much now in these schools, in these few schools, but training of the mind is not done. That is different. That's what she's saying, that you learn all the subjects. It's not that they are not important. They make the brain, you know, what does she say? The schooling serve as a system of, they increase the suppleness of the brain. So they do equip us for something, but they do not train the mind, which all of us have experienced and know very well.
What does suppleness of the brain mean, Didi?
What is suppleness? In
Flexibility.
you can bend, you can change shape, you can be flexible, agile. I think all these combination of, so mind by its very nature is rigid. That's the, just like the body is very difficult to change. Mind's tendency is to divide and to get stuck in rigidity. By nature, mind is not supple.
Hmm.
It has to be made supple. Suppleness is important. So when you study different, you think in one particular way in one subject, you think in another way in another subject. When you do creative writing in English or something, you have to, when you do summaries and Pressy and Pressy Pragati, but these kind of things you have to think in another way. So it makes it, gives it the habit of thinking in various ways, that suppleness.
Would it also mean
Yeah.
difference in opinions, open to ideas?
That is wideness.
Okay.
So we are talking of the mind in general. Some people are open to ideas. Here we are talking of mind in general and mental education in general.
So, looking at an issue, let's say, from different perspectives, would that be suppleness or widening?
Mind.
Widening. So, what exactly would suppleness? By an example, if you could.
To cut them out rigidly, here suppleness ends and here widening begins. Because suppleness is essential for widening. But if you have suppleness, it doesn't necessarily mean you have a wideness of thinking. You may be able to change your thoughts within your comfort zone, within your set of beliefs. That way, the mind is supple, but you may not be open to difference of opinion or difference of culture or difference of religion, difference of philosophies, etc. They're associated qualities, but widening is larger, I would say.
Will that suppleness also here means like suppose I'm doing something in maths, so slowly, steadily, I'm able to, from simple calculations, I'm able to do very complex and very complex. Similarly, in literature or maybe any subject, that slowly the faculty of brain is trained in a way that you are able to problem solve that particular area in more complex way.
Yeah, it's not exactly the faculty that is trained. It is you are able to you learn concepts, so you apply them, and then you are able to solve greater and greater.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it is a I'm reminded of a story. Uh, I don't know. I heard or read. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it at the physical level. I'm going to come to Ila after this because I want her to explain suppleness in physical terms. But
Physical terms.
physical, what does suppleness mean for the body?
Okay, you finish, then I'll try.
So this thing is about there was a family, whatever, a Brahmin or something, and his daughter living in a forest, and the king comes there and sees this girl carrying a sizable size of cow or cow up the stairs, and he's absolutely amazed that, I mean, it's an allegorical story, so if you apply logic, it won't make much sense. So he's surprised that how can she carry such a heavy creature. Oh, I'm sorry. There's before this, before this, there is a thing that he shoots something, and he's very proud of his skill, and everybody praises him, but this girl laughs. So he says he's very upset. Why did this girl laugh? And when he comes to their house, he sees her carrying this. So she says, "This is nothing. I have been carrying this calf when the calf was born. I carried it and I carried it every day, and the calf grew up, but I have been carrying every day. So my strength also grew. So, what is so big about you shooting that? I mean, you have been shooting simple things, then you shot more complex, then you shot more difficult ones. It is just a matter of practice. So, there is nothing great about it. So, that is the thing. Okay, Ila,
Yeah,
what is
yeah. What did you want me to say? What is
a
the suppleness in the body?
body supple? What does it mean?
What does it mean? Well, suppleness in the body is quite, simple. It's basically that you have the flexibility to bend and move your body in different directions. So, and to do that, you just need to, you need to do two things. One is that you have to be very consistent in practice. So when you start creating, start trying to make your body supple, say, for example, if, at this age, people start trying to do stuff, you can't, get to being completely supple instantly. So you have to practice, and you practice, the lengthening and the stretching and so on, and over a period of time you get supple. So it's not something that happens overnight. It's not that something that you can create instantly. but you have to work on it to create suppleness within the body.
Breaking the stiffness and rigidity of the body.
Yeah.
So if my body has become supple, I have a supple body, but it doesn't mean I'm open to doing anything. I can do it, but I'm not open to doing gymnastics. I'm not open to dancing. I'm not open to this, that, and the other.
But you have the options available to you. If your body is not supple, the options are completely excluded.
So your mind can be supple, but if you're not open to other things, the widening is missing. So supple, for widening, suppleness is essential, but widening is different from, there has to be that openness to use your suppleness for various things. Yeah. Actually, always I find if you explain it physically, it is exactly the same for mind and for even spiritual matters. It is the same thing. The body is a great help in understanding the spiritual stuff. Okay. Sagarika, will you read this?
A true mental education, which will prepare man for a higher life, has five principal phrases. Normally, these phrases follow one after another. But in exceptional individuals, they may alternate or even proceed simultaneously. These five phases, in brief, are development of the power of concentration, the capacity of attention. Number two, development of the capacities of expansion, widening, complexity, and richness. Third, organization of one's ideas around a central idea, a higher ideal, or a supremely luminous idea that will serve as a guide in life. Number four, thought control, rejection of undesirable thoughts to become able to think only what one wants and when one wants. Number five, development of mental silence, perfect calm, and more total receptivity to inspirations coming from the higher region of the being.
This is quite an amazing exposition. Never ever, at least when I first read it, I've never come across, how to train the mind. I mean, I never thought like this. Let's just say that. This is now we might have read it quite a few times, so we are familiar with it. But if you really look at it, nobody speaks of training the mind in this way. And when you apply it to your life and yourself, you will see what the meanings are. So please don't miss this phrase, which will prepare us for a higher life. So if we want to lead a higher life and not just the ordinary life, what is ordinary life? We have talked about it earlier. What is ordinary life? Huh?
I mean, doing daily life and make ourselves happy with the surroundings and all.
Just pursuing happiness, pleasure, living for no higher purpose, living for small aims, selfish aims, whatever they be, uh, that is ordinary life. So if you want to live a higher life, then you have to develop the mind like this. Five principal phases. He says normally they follow, so there is a sequence to it. But in exceptional individuals, they may alternate or even proceed simultaneously. See, we are at a different stage. We have grown up without this kind of education. So when we start, we would have to work on all of them kind of. But that doesn't mean we are exceptional individuals. We are exceptions because we were excluded from this kind of education. In that sense, we are exceptions. But when she's saying exceptional individuals, she means starting young. So 5 phases are power of concentration, capacity of attention. Second is just the opposite of it. So this is an image I always use. Power of concentration is like you bring things together, you focus, and expansion is where you open, you make it wide. So it's just the opposite movement. Expansion, widening, complexity, richness. And if she has used 4 words, each word would have its meaning. It's not just let's use adjectives or let's use qualities or whatever. These are not adjectives. Organization of one's ideas around a central idea. Third step, higher ideal or a supremely luminous idea that will serve as a guide in life. These 2, she will explain later, are higher. These 3 are something which all of us, they are more achievable. These 2 are more after the mind has developed to this extent, then the 4th and 5th come. First is thought control. Second is absence of thoughts, silence, empty mind, and receptivity. So let's see what she says about each.
I'm wondering, with social media and phones nowadays with children, the first one is itself is so difficult. Yeah.
It is difficult, and yet at the same time, see, this challenge has always been there. Of course, there is a difference also because the radiation from these gadgets does its own damage. But as far as children being interested in something which the adults look at as a distraction or as something not good, that has always been there, whether it is toys, whether it is books, whether storybooks, whether it is cricket, whether it's whatever. Now views are changing, but as long as the child is, one has to see, are they concentrated when they do social media? How long can they do it without getting distracted? So maybe their concentration is developing even there. Like it is said that unless interest is the key for concentration. So if a child is interested in something, the concentration develops. As long as the child is interested, they will stay concentrated. But yes, there is also the phenomena of being fidgety. And it's not just social media, it is the television where programs are getting shorter and shorter with ad breaks because the mind is losing
Yeah.
capacity to focus for a longer time. So there are lots of factors, and every factor has its own repercussions. But I'm saying, even within that, this might exist because the brain, that is the tendency of the brain, that is a,
Mm, mm, mm.
it might be there, or even in that. We have tech geniuses, otherwise we won't. Do you want to start reading the explanation now? Or just the first para? This much. We
I,
have, sorry.
you want me to read?
Okay, Premi, start.
It is not possible to give here all the details concerning the methods to be employed in the application of these 5 phases of education to different individuals. Still, a few explanation on points of detail can be given. undeniable, what most impairs mental progress in the children is the constant dispersion of their thoughts. Their thoughts flutter hither, thither like butterflies, and they have to make a great effort to fix them. Yet, this capacity is latent in them. For when you succeed in arousing their interest, they are capable of a good deal of attention. By ingenuity, therefore, the, the educator will gradually help the child to become capable of sustained effort of attention and a faculty of more and more complete absorption in the work in hand. All methods that can develop this faculty of attention, from games to reward or good, can all be utilized according to the need and the circumstances. But it is the psychological attention that is most important, and the sovereign method is to arouse in the child an interest in what you want to teach him. A liking of work, a will progress, a will to progress. To love to learn is the most precious gift that one can give to a child. To learn, to love to learn always and everywhere, so that all circumstances, all happenings in life may be constantly renewed opportunities for learning more and always more.
Uh, Please, I want to draw your attention to this. Different individuals. So, what the mother is saying, that for each child, the method may be different. When we want to train these 5 phases, or at least the first 3, it is not necessary that the method will be the same for each person. But this seems to be a basic principle. And beyond this, the methods we evolve may differ depending on who the child is, who the learner is. So remember that, because the mind's tendency is to generalize and to say, bas yehi ab sabke saath hoga. So there is this constant dispersion. And then she says, because the capacity is latent, the key is to arouse the interest. If I want to develop the faculty of attention in children, Sagarika, then I have to first arouse their interest. Once they are interested in something, they are capable of a good deal of attention. So suppose I want to teach shapes or colors or numbers or human body or whatever. By his ingenuity, creativity, originality, inventiveness, the teacher will gradually help the child to become capable of a sustained effort of attention. So even if I'm telling a story and the child does not sit, maybe I just tell a story which takes 2 minutes. Next week, I tell a story which takes 4 minutes. Third week, I tell a story which takes 8 minutes. So gradually, the effort of attention increases. But the story has to be something which will arouse the child's interest. Once the interest is caught, the child will sit. Now, obviously, if the child is different, a child who cannot sit and loves to be outside, then I will tell the story outside. Not to make things so difficult. You have to be inside also and you have to listen to the story also. That is a double challenge. So that's why different methods with different individuals. Sorry, I'm because she's in Lavanir and she took faculty of attention last week as the one of the aims. So that's why I'm addressing her. There was some confusion. Okay. And then she says all methods are good, from games to rewards. Now, rewards she does not mean as bribes. You do this, then I'll give you a chocolate. Reward is always related to that activity or to that effort, to that urge for progress. And rewards, of course, she mentions, but when I'm working day to day with children, it's not that every day I'm going to give a reward. Reward can also be a star on the board, for example, and can all be utilized according to the need and circumstances. And now she says something most important. She says, but it is the psychological action. Whose psychological action? The teacher's. The psychological action of the teacher that is most important. And the sovereign, the most important uh, key method is to arouse in the child an interest in what you want to teach him, a liking for work. So if work is interesting, the child will be interested. If the work is not interesting, the child will take it as work and not be interested. And finally, a will to progress. So these are stages. First an interest, then a liking for it, and then a will to progress. Gradually it comes. Yes, Sagarika.
What does matlab, means that psychological action means their interest, matlab, related to interest.
Related to all this, your psychological, how will you arouse the interest? You can create the most beautiful setting, have the most wonderful learning resources, have the latest puzzles and shining things and everything. But the child is not interested. The interest has to be created through your psychological action, not just by resources and things. It's the sometimes a question. Okay, I'll give you a very small example from today. I was at Lavani for a little while to observe, and I had an interaction with a child. And some other child had scattered all the various colored wooden these cylindrical things, wooden little sticks, uh, all in different colors everywhere, and was not willing, new child, not willing to pick it up. Then I was interacting with another child and I said, अच्छा अब ये सारा इसमें डाल दें? No response. He got busy in something. Then I said, अच्छा मैं तो येलो वाले डाल रही हूँ अब इसमें, येलो वालों को घर जाना है, मैं इस बास्केट में डाल रही हूँ. He came, हाँ इस वाले येलो को भी घर जाना है, अब इस ग्रीन को घर जाना है, अब इस ब्लू को घर जाना है. And we finished the whole basket. So that was the psychological action. Same way, I was sitting at a table with another child, new child again, who was doing some puzzles. When he saw me, he doesn't know me. So he wanted to get away, get up and run away, look for his mama, because he doesn't know me. So I just sat and I didn't look at him once. I didn't give him any attention. But I just took those puzzles, 2, 3 of them, and I started making my pictures with great concentration without looking at him. Then he looked, what am I doing? Then I just pushed the things away without looking at him. I pushed them away towards him. And I got busy with another set of cards. Then he sat down and he also started. But I never said anything to him. In a third case, I started talking to the other child. Oh, shall we do this? Then this child got interested. So each time the method was different. So the resources were there, but the psychological action was different based on what I felt, what I sensed from the child, that this child is not open to interact with me. So I should pretend I'm ignoring him and do this. So this is an example. But 3 things: interest, liking for work, and a will to progress. And then to love to learn is the most precious gift. Because if a child loves to learn, then doesn't need teachers now, finally. All circumstances, all happening in his life may be constantly renewed opportunities for learning more and always more. That is concentration, power of concept. So she is given what it means and also indications of how to develop it and what to develop. What are the stages? What you have to develop? Interest, love to learn, and will to progress finally. That will come later. Very interesting chapter because mind is much easier for all of us to understand. Okay, so we end here today. Yeah, we've shot past the time. If anybody has anything, any final comments or anything to say.
Just one thing which is a little hatke, but someday maybe we can address that. Here we are talking about children, if we speak in that language, as a raw material we have to work on, and they are so clean and fresh, not as much, affected by whatever has happened. I am working with a segment who are youngsters and late school or early college. Now, why is quota happening? Why are addictions happening? Why are so many things happening? They are really interested once you start talking to them about these principles. But when they come to the specifics, because everything is, the fears and everything is so deeply ingrained into them, how does one start working and breaking that without, as you gave the examples very subtly, you led those children to whatever you wanted to. How to replicate that at their level? Because they are coming with so much of baggage that the psychological makeup of the teacher is so important, or a facilitator, because they are interested, that's for sure. They are looking for something, some X factor which will bring them out of that.
Yeah, we will have to take it up another time. Ila, myself, Ruhi also, we have been working with this kind of age group. Although I know the lot you work with is a very different, also very socially, culturally. I believe you're referring to youth.
I am working with both now, the urban and the rural. So both ways, see, I see the basic problems are same, except for the outer comforts and a few things which the urban people get more than the rural.
So yeah, it can be once we have run through the chapters, we can then take up practical issues, not for children, but more for grown-ups and see how to apply this and what does it mean for that. Okay, thank you. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So let's start. We'll resume our study of mental education. Share my screen. Okay. So last time we had read about these 5 stages that Mother speaks of, which are generally successive, although can also be simultaneous. Concentration, expansion, organizing around a central idea, thought control, and mental silence. Now we'll start with. Did we read this first para? Had we read this?
No, we didn't.
Okay. So let's start with this paragraph then. Yeah. Pooja, will you start, please?
Sure, but I think To Love to Learn was read last time when I went through the audio.
Yeah, okay, doesn't matter. Let's just start with it.
Okay. Undeniably, what most impedes mental progress in children is the constant dispersion of their thoughts. Their thoughts flutter hither and thither like butterflies, and they have to make a great effort to fix them. Yet this capacity is latent in them, for when you succeed in arousing their interest, they are capable of a good deal of attention. By his ingenuity, therefore, the educator will gradually help the child to become capable of a sustained effort of attention and a faculty of more and more complete absorption in the work in hand. All methods that can develop this faculty of attention, from games to rewards, are good and can all be utilized according to the need and the circumstances. But it is the psychological action that is most important, and the sovereign method is to arouse in the child an interest in what you want to teach him, a liking for work, and a will to progress. To love to learn is the most precious gift that one can give to a child. To love to learn always and everywhere, so that all circumstances, all happenings in life may be constantly renewed opportunities for learning more and always more.
Yeah, we did read and also discuss this last time regarding attention and interest. And once the interest is there, then going to will to progress, liking for work and will to progress. So unless there is anything to further discuss, we will carry on. If anybody has anything to share or ask, please do so. Okay. Nishi, will you take up this paragraph?
Yes. Sati. For that, to attention and concentration should be added observation, precise recording, and faithfulness of memory. This faculty of observation can be developed by varied and spontaneous exercises, making use of every opportunity that presents itself to keep the child's thought, thought, wakeful, alert, and prompt. The growth of the understanding should be stressed much more than that of memory. One knows well only what one has understood. Things learned by heart mechanically fade away little by little and finally disappear. That what is understood is never forgotten. Moreover, you must never refuse to explain to a child the how and why of things. If you cannot do it yourself, you must direct the child to those who are qualified to answer or point out to him some books that deal with the question. In this way, you will progressively awaken the child the taste for true study and the habit for making a persistent effort to know.
So all this, the mother is starting from concentration, going on to observation, memory, understanding, and the cause and effect. All this, the mother is including in the first phase, power of concentration, capacity of attention. That attention becomes more precise when you start observing something in detail. And observation becomes more detailed when you pay attention. Both are interlinked. For example, if you do a still life sketch, things you have not noticed about that object, when you are doing the still life sketch, you will start noticing minor details. So your observation will become more detailed and your attention more precise and focused. And whatever you do with both attention and observation, it will go into your memory. And then, if there is a concept to be understood, then memory, of course, all of us know that we remember. What we have understood, we remember. So she speaks about, obviously, in this chapter, or like she always says, that look at so many references are there for specific exercises, but try and do these things to keep the child's thought wakeful, alert, and prompt. But the child is always wakeful, noticing things, is alert and prompt. Mm. And this point, most often we end up saying, "अभी तुम बहुत छोटे हो, अभी नहीं समझोगे, जब बड़े हो जाओगे तब समझ आएगी." Whereas the mother says, always you must explain to the child how and why of things. Because this will awaken in the child the taste for true study and the habit of making a persistent effort to know. Anything to discuss or share in this paragraph?
Mother says understanding should be stressed much more than memory.
Yes.
That is so interesting. And if you could expand a bit on this.
Don't you know from your personal experience?
I'm still going through the process of transiting myself from memory to understanding.
Understand something. So the problem is that when we say memory, the way we have been trained, mugging up, which is a repetition of exact words or repetition of exact data, we consider that to be memory. But that's only one aspect of memory. So if I have understood what is the logic behind tables, multiplication tables, I don't really need to mug them up. No, I can work it out because I've understood the logic. But nobody.
Memory, sorry to interrupt. Memory we would equate to recalling also.
So you recall the logic and you apply it.
Yeah.
You have retained the logic. Why? Not because you just mugged it up.
Mm.
Understood the logic. Same way when you teach spellings, if you learn to recognize patterns, the sound and pattern connection, you can work out spellings and you can also, uh, even when you meet new words, you can try and spell them. But if you mug up, then you have only that much of a store, which you may or may not remember. I mean, I'm talking of very mundane, where generally mugging up is encouraged. Or a poem, a passage, even a poem. I think I've shared this example with you earlier, which I've tried myself, that when you live a poem, you experience each word and you make it an internal experience, you remember all the words. I did this with God's Labor, which is a 4 or 5 page poem by Sri Aurobindo. And I remembered all of it without trying to mug it up because I just tried and live it, visualize it, experience it as I was reading it. And then I remembered. And same with smaller, shorter poems. So, understanding, that's what the mother is saying, is much more, should be stressed than memory. She's not saying memory is not required. Faculty of memory is required. Yeah, Ila.
So I have only one comment here, and that is that, memory is so subjective, right? So I I think another plus to understanding logic and not remembering is because you don't remember everything completely and perfectly. We don't all have eidetic memories that you see something and it's exactly that you recall. You recall it through your own filters, whatever you remember. But if you remember the logic of things, then whatever happens whenever you're stuck, you at least know how to find a path as opposed to trying to recall, because the recall could be quite biased and not reliable.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Memory is generally we interpret it as something which is factual and remembering all the facts. Now, I remember as a child, I'm sure all of us in geography and all, we were taught which state produces which crop, what minerals. I could never remember. But you visit the state, it's an experience, and you see and you go to those factories and you go to those fields and the mines, you will always remember which state does what. So memory is generally treated in education as a kind of a dead thing. You know, you just store and you have to just keep it like that. But memory has its uses. It's a faculty of memory is great, but the methods used and the importance given to it, this kind of memory is, that's what mother is talking about. Not that, and if we have to choose between the two, then understanding is more important than memory. We also recall places just because we smell something which we have smelled before. Suddenly, the whole experience or the whole place comes back to us. Yesterday, somebody sent me a photo of when I was in class 3, group photo. And suddenly, I looked at a girl's face. I have never thought of her ever. And suddenly, I told my friend, "Is this her name?" And she said, "Yes." God knows where it came from. I'd never thought of her, never remembered her face. But when I saw the photo, suddenly I could connect. Somewhere it was there. So memory is also quite a strange thing.
See, that is all. Thank you. It was very nice. But sometimes we tell children, learn it by theory of association and things like that. So that can also be used as a tool. This is what I want. And the understanding also comes, isn't it? As you said, memory is also important.
Memory is also important in certain, because it trains a certain part of the brain to recall things with exactitude. That is important. Memory has three parts now. You have to retain, and what is the third? You have to receive, retain, and recall. Oh, there's organization also. So this faculty of this ability to associative patterns and all, that is a tool to retain and organize information in your head. And recalling may or may not happen still. You have to find your key to it. The memory also has to be broken down into steps. Some people have a lot of things in their head, but in the right moment, they cannot recall.
Thank you.
Yeah, Prerna, would you
Yeah.
like to?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was thinking something. I think here the skill is also very important part. Like so many times when I'm cooking anything, I realize that this is the way my mother used to cook. I don't know the recipe. I have not remembered anything. But whenever I'm doing, and many times I see uh, I'm doing the similar stuff my mother is doing. The same way I'm using the utensils the same way. And there's so many things that observation helps, and they're stored in your memory. And
Your,
sorry.
what you said later, observation. You observe,
Hmm,
and that
hmm,
went subconscious.
hmm,
Maybe you didn't observe consciously
hmm,
as she was around and you were watching her or you were aware of her doing certain actions. They went into your subconscious.
hmm,
Something triggered that memory, just like this girl's name, it was in
hmm,
my,
hmm.
something triggers that memory to come to the forefront. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I did. Uh,
Yeah, you can start from there.
this will bring us quite naturally to the second phase of development, in which the mind should be widened and enriched. You will gradually show the child that everything can become an interesting subject for study if it is approached in the right way. The life of every day, of every moment, is the best school of all, varied, complex, full of unexpected experiences, problems to be solved, clear and striking examples, and obvious consequences. It is so easy to arouse healthy curiosity in children. If you answer with intelligence and clarity, the numerous question they ask. An interesting reply to one readily brings others in its train. And so the attentive child learns without effort much more than he usually does in the classroom. By a choice made with care and insight, you should also teach him to enjoy good reading, which good reading, mat, good reading matter, which in both instructive and attractive. Don't be afraid of anything that awakens and pleases his imagination. Imagination develops the creative mental faculty and through its study becomes living and the mind develops in joy. Should I continue? Okay. In order to increase the suppleness and okay.
We have to discuss this first.
I'm not, when I'm speaking, I'm not able to listen to you.
Can you hear me now? Prerna, can you
Yes,
hear me?
I can. Huh.
So now she's going on to the second phase, which was widening and enrichment. Enriching, she's talking about, and widening also, through life. Because everything that happens in life, if one observes it and makes it an occasion for learning, then there is enough resource material without going to books or activities or anything like that. So curiosity is the key for richness and widening. And then she says, this is also important, choice made with care and insight. Because in another place, when she was asked what kind of books should be there in the library, the mother has spoken about, choice of literature, something which has positive effects on the consciousness, anything which degrades the consciousness. Same way in music or cinema should be avoided. So good reading matter. Of course, when she was speaking, books were the primary means. And there she says, do not be afraid of anything that awakens and pleases the child's imagination. Imagination develops the creative mental faculty, and through it, study becomes living mind. So, for wideness and all, imagination is very important also. To be able to imagine various solutions, thinking out of the box, these kind of things. Anybody wants to say or discuss anything? Okay.
It just seems so logical, including the earlier one that, memory versus understanding. And I'm just wondering that why is it so hard, to do it? Because very often I see that even in our school, a lot of times, we are sometimes assessing only memory, not understanding. So the focus becomes on memory. And
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I would like to share something. So this time when we went for one of our nature trips, we had some children, a family who was not used to being in the jungles and looking for things, and their parents were quite fearful of the whole experience that they would have, and but we did all of this, looking at leaf patterns and trying to arouse their curiosity at each thing, all the kinds of different shapes and sizes of mushrooms, the patterns on the leaves, the change in the clouds coming down, and various things. We were just making interesting things out of them just to arouse their curiosity, and then showing them all the insects and everything. And when we would go back, we would show them, give them those field guides with interesting pictures and tell them, what did you find? Would you like to look at the trees you found or the insects you found? And then by the end of the whole thing, they were so intrigued. They were drawing all of them together, were drawing the creatures they had seen, the patterns, and they had such amazing questions, which of course sometimes even we have to think how to answer them. And so their parents were at the end really surprised as to, because they're quite like around 10 years of age, and they had never experienced something like this, 10 and 12. And so it was like we had given this experience to our children, but since early, these children came from and their parents were thinking, and we were thinking that probably we'll have to, they'll get bored very soon. They won't be able to trek so much and kind of things, they'll be fearful. But it was amazing to see how this curiosity and this kind of understanding. So the curiosity was, aroused, and for them to be drawing attention, and they understood each thing. So they were able to go through the books and everything and draw. So it was quite an amazing understanding even for us.
Thanks, Pooja. Okay, Kirti, would you like to read this paragraph?
In order to increase the suppleness and comprehensiveness of his mind, one should see not only that he studies many varied topics, but above all that a single subject is approached in various ways, so that the child understands in a practical manner that there are many ways of facing the same intellectual problem, of considering it and solving it. This will remove all rigidity from his brain, and at the same time, it will make his thinking richer and more supple and prepare it for a more complex and comprehensive synthesis. In this way, also, the child will be imbued with the sense of the extreme relativity of mental learning, and little by little, an aspiration for a truer source of knowledge will awaken in him. Further?
No. So I think the paragraph is quite clear. The only thing I want to highlight and ask you, why does she say that by doing this kind of a thing, widening, child will be imbued with the sense of extreme relativity of mental learning? Why does she say that?
When she's saying that the single subject is approached in various ways, and the child is given the option to try out it, understand it in practical manners, and solve it, I think what she's trying to say, as per my understanding, what she's trying to say is that the child tries out various options to understand something, not being rigid to one way of learning, or trying to understand or problem solve the thing practically in one or two ways, and then understands that there are different ways of doing it, and each way has a different understanding or learning to it. Or some things can, like if something was not successful, then maybe try again and learn something more.
That is okay, but why does she say extreme relativity of mental learning and an aspiration for a truer source of knowledge? Why does she say this? Yes, Ila.
Maybe because when you're offered a large variety of options for something like, say, for example, even if you're eating, say, a large thali and you have many, many different kinds of food, then you get to appreciate the difference that you have in everything that is offered. And so, because of the fact that you're given so many different ways of looking at a problem and so many different ways of learning, that you actually look for what is the truest form of knowledge. You try and find the essence of whatever it is that you're studying because you've approached it in so many different ways that it actually, I feel, enhances your sense of discrimination. And because you become more able to discriminate, you actually look for what she's calling the extreme relativity of mental learning. I think is actually the ability to discriminate and therefore come to the truth or the essence of what is being said about something.
Okay. Anybody else?
What does it mean, relativity of mental learning?
That's what I'm asking you. Yes, Kirti.
No, I was thinking that he might be able to relate to the real why he's there and what is the true source of knowledge. Because Sri Aurobindo says everything is within the child. I don't know how to explain it, but that kind of understanding I'm getting from this.
But how does this connect that when the child approaches, the child is encouraged to look at a problem for various different angles, try out various ways? How does it build up this sense of extreme relativity of mental learning? What does it mean? And then how does it little by little grows in the child an aspiration for a truer source of knowledge?
See, truer source of knowledge is higher knowledge, which has to ultimately.
Okay, but what is the connection? I agree with you. Truer source is actually psychic or higher. Yes,
The
that's
connection is as the,
not the mind,
yeah,
beyond the mind.
the suppleness of the mind will lead to it, maybe. Yes.
Okay. So the thing is, when she says relativity of mental learning, what is the human aspiration? It is for absolute certitude of knowledge. When you see that this view is also right, that view is also right, whereas it is very important to live a life, a social life, to not be rigid. We have to break the rigidity of mind and learn to look at the same thing from various angles. But then we also realize as we go along that mind cannot give absolute certitude. There is no point of view in the mental domain which has the absolute certitude that this alone is the truth and the other point of view cannot be true. That is what we are trying to break, in fact, that rigidity. So, as the suppleness grows, as the wideness grows, which enriches the mind, there comes a point that one also realizes, like it is in terms of memory, I was saying it's subjective and relative. One realizes that everything is relative. For the time being, it is true, but not forever and ever. For me, it is true, but not for everybody. For this, that, and the other. So it is conditional knowledge. It is not an absolute knowledge. So it becomes a relative knowledge. So mental learning is relative. And then an aspiration for a truer source of knowledge, something that will give not the essence of all the points of view, but which will be a true source, truer than the mind. Vital is a source, body is a source, mind is a source. Truer source, which we are going towards in the next chapter is psychic or higher knowledge. Truer source, that aspiration will awaken. We see that scientists who have gone very far, Einstein and all those brilliant names, have automatically come turned to spirituality. Why is that? They have come to a point where they've said there is something beyond which the mind cannot explain. And I think it is because they have really developed the mind, not been rigid, really developed the mind properly, and then have seen that there is something beyond. Mind has its limits. So they've gone to that extreme. So this is what this sentence is saying, which he doesn't explain here, but which then, uh, as the next chapter is psychic and spiritual education, there it comes in. Clear? Anything to question or disagree or etc. etc. Okay. Who hasn't read? Ila, you want to read before you go?
Yeah, sure. I'll just enlarge it a bit. 1 second. Yeah, okay. Indeed, as a child grows older and progresses in his studies, his mind too ripens and becomes more and more capable of forming general ideas, and with them almost always comes a need for certitude, for a knowledge that is stable enough to form the basis of a mental construction which will permit all the diverse and scattered and often contradictory ideas accumulated in his brain to be organized and put in order. This ordering is indeed very necessary if one is to avoid chaos in one's thoughts. All contradictions can be transformed into complements, but for that, one must discover the higher idea that will have the power to bring them harmoniously together. It is always good to consider every problem from all possible standpoints so as to avoid partiality and exclusiveness. But if the thought is to be active and creative, it must, in every case, be the natural and logical synthesis of all the points of view adopted. And if you want to make the totality of your thoughts into a dynamic and constructive force, you must also take great care as to the choice of the central idea of your mental synthesis, for upon that will depend the value of the synthesis. The higher and larger the central idea and the more universal it is, rising above time and space, the more numerous and the more complex will be the ideas, notions, and thoughts which it will be able to organize and harmonize. Very
It's
complicated.
para, lots of ideas.
Lots of ideas in here.
Just to point out, with this, till here, it was the second phase, the widening phase, the expansion. Now she's going on to the third, which is organization of one's ideas around a central idea, a higher ideal, or a supremely luminous idea that will serve as a guide in life. So, this is what she's saying that so first, that's why she says successive. She says in rare cases it may be simultaneous because she's talking of children. You and I have to do everything together because now we are a little behind. But for children, it is successive because first concentration, then comes the widening. And as widening happens, suppleness happens, then comes a need for certitude. Because how do you act? If you say this is also right, this is also right, that person is also right, that person is also right, how do you make any decision for your action? You have to say, okay, I believe in this and I will act on this without negating what you believe. So, to come to that point, then how will you decide what is the right thing? Do you have to have a central idea? Or, like she said in the beginning, aimless life is a miserable life. So, you have to have that anchoring point, rather, whether as a vision, an aim, an ideal, an idea, an ambition, whatever it is, for a knowledge that is stable enough to form the basis of a mental construction. So, not just I have to just act now. She's talking of cohesiveness, of authenticity, of consistency. Because if we look at our brain, we have contradictory ideas existing together. And that's why we perceive others and others perceive us as being either hypocrites, not authentic, or doing double talk, all these things, which we unconsciously do. To one person, if my vital is in favor, I will respond differently to that person when they ask me a question. I might allow them something which to other I will say, no, no, it can never be allowed, for example. So if the, and same way for my own thinking also, that's why we have the problem of discord between what we believe and our actions. Because the mind is not organized, and we can justify when we want to binge, we justify that. When we want to diet, we justify that. So all contradictory ideas are in our brain. So mental construction, which will permit all the diverse and scattered and often contradictory ideas accumulated to be organized and put in order. And this order is not anybody else's. This order has to be one's own to avoid chaos in one's thoughts. And then she says all contradictions can be transformed into complements. So actually, there is nothing contradictory in the world. Everything can complement each other. Somewhere else, she's quoted, which chapter I'm forgetting. Anyway, that somebody has said that there is nothing, no evil in the world. It is only things are not in their right place. So the moment you put it in its right place, contradiction becomes complementary to each other. But for that, one has to discover the higher idea that will have the power to bring them harmoniously together, not a compromise. Compromise and harmony are two different things. In compromise, it is I give some, you give some, and we have a meeting point. But both of us have to give away something of what we believe in. Harmony is, when you do a jigsaw puzzle, you don't chip off the pieces, you connect them together to form a beautiful whole. So that is harmony. It is always good to consider every problem from all possible standpoints. So that is again the second thing. Why? Because to avoid being partial to one idea or another and exclusive to one idea or another. But so when you are thinking as a philosopher, that is fine. But when you have to act and you have to create, then you have to have a synthesis which is natural and logical of all the points of view you have adopted. Adopted means you have adopted for yourself to lead your life. Then you have to see, okay, if I believe in this also, and that also, and the third thing also, and they are not sitting together properly, how do you harmonize them? What is the point at which you will come across? Now, to give a very, very simple example, initially, when one comes to Sri Aurobindo and Mother, for example, one feels, okay, I say from my experience that, you only have to believe in Sri Aurobindo and Mother. So if I used to have an affinity to Christ or to Krishna, I have to give that up and I have to only believe in Sri Aurobindo and Mother. Then gradually you come to a point where you start seeing Sri Krishna and Sri Aurobindo or in the Mother, and you start having those experiences. And then there is no contradiction. Then you are comfortable, you are okay when you are looking at Krishna, you are with the Mother or Sri Aurobindo. When you are looking at Mother or Sri Aurobindo, you are also with Krishna. So your consciousness goes to a higher level where there is no contradiction. For some reason, this example came to my mind, so I'm giving. So all the points of view adopted. And if you want to make the totality of your thoughts into a dynamic and constructive force for action, you have to take great care. What is the central idea that you will? So you come to an idea and then you see, does it have the power to guide my life in the direction I want to go? And for upon that will depend the value of the synthesis. So here, when the mother is speaking, it seems she's speaking in a very large sense for life. But the same principle can be applied if there is a team meeting, there is a project to be done. It can be applied at every level, in a family, in various group settings. The higher and larger the central idea, and the more universal it is, rising above time and space, the more numerous and the more complex will be the ideas, notions, and thoughts which it will be able to organize and harmonize. So, as an exercise, one starts with simpler things, and then gradually one develops the capacity. That is what you see when you read Sri Aurobindo's books, The Ideal of Human Unity, or Human Cycle, especially, I would say, or the synthesis of yoga, where various different methods, or essays on the Gita, that that is what he's doing. He's going rising above time and space and presenting a synthesis where everything Mayavad, illusionism, Advait, Dvait, everything finds its place. So that is what it is. Uh-huh. So now I wait for your own views and sharing or discussion, whatever. Is it clear? Because this is a very, very important concept. Very important. This third step is very important for action. Without it, you cannot be active. Come on, somebody say something. Present your views. Discuss. If it makes sense to you, doesn't make sense to you, something is clear, something is not clear.
One thing is clear. You know, these words, you start understanding more and more. When she says the quality of your life will depend on the quality of your aim, that has, now that you've also explained and we have read, it's brought in further clarity. It's so important, as you say, to have a central idea. And another thing is, be supple about it. Today, I think this is very important. Even the central idea progressively will progress, isn't it?
Changes, of course. Certain ideas might remain the same. For example, last time Sagarika, I think, was sharing that be with the mother. you know. Now, that's a central idea. If that's guiding her life, then that might never change. Uh, but whether everything in her head and in her vital is aligned to that, that is her work. Same way for me, same way for you. Whatever our central idea is. Somewhere else, the mother has spoken about it, that every night to go over all your thoughts and to see what is in harmony with your. Or maybe she's speaking in the next paragraph. I'm not sure, but yeah, she's spoken about it elsewhere. That go over every day, and whatever is not in harmony with your central idea, reject it. This kind of organization every night.
Makes a lot of sense, Didi. I mean, the example that you gave about following mother and Sri Aurobindo, and how somebody may already be into some kind of a Buddhism, and then there's this thing in our head that, am I being disloyal? Should I follow only one and not the other? And I think it's and so many when we see people fighting over main theek hu ya tum theek ho, ya this is better or that is better, is coming a lot from chaos in one's thought, that we haven't organized and put them. And I thought this statement, this particular phrase, is something that I found very profound, that all contradictions can be transformed into compliments. But we don't reach that stage. We just collect facts and we base our opinion, and we don't go further than collection of facts.
It's also because the second step is not done, the widening, the ability to perceive various points of view and to think from various angles.
Hmm.
And what ki main theek hu, tum galat ho, that is also again.
Yeah.
Another thing, can I now or we are still on that?
Go ahead, Kirti.
Another thing I felt something very important you brought it to the notice is in theory it's one thing, but when we have to practically apply it, there is a process to it. And then I think these things become so important. As you said, when we come to it, write a journal, go through what you did, various methods which we have to make or rather apply it. The application of these principles, what we are reading, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then only we'll reach, and just by reading, it's one thing.
Of course.
No, but if we speak and relive and re-say it, it becomes important for us also to not, just weaken on that point.
Yes, yes. Shall we go ahead then? Sagarika, read this para, please. Just one para.
Sure, Anuradha. It goes without saying that this work of organization cannot be done once and for all. The mind, if it is to keep its vigor and youth, must progress constantly, revise its notions in the light of new knowledge, enlarge its framework to include fresh notions, and constantly reclassify and reorganize its thoughts so that each of them may find its your true place in relation to the others and the whole remain harmonious and orderly.
That's what you were saying, Kirti, no? This is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So because if you just get stuck to, okay, now I have done it once and it's done, you again slip back to the rigidity. So that suppleness has to remain always, to as you progress and as the world progresses, to keep changing. Uh, Today somebody had shared there is a GC upcoming events group. I don't know how many of you are part of it. Pooja, I think you must be. Kirti, are you? GC upcoming events? WhatsApp.
No.
Uh, so somebody had posted on it a write up or a Facebook post by one gentleman. And that was about how AI is, he connects AI and the coming of the supermind and the action of the supramental force on earth. Very interesting. I'll share it in this group. Interesting take. I mean, I would have never thought like this. So it was quite a interesting way of looking at things. And it does make sense. It's not that it doesn't. Initially, I thought, oh no, I don't want to read it. I am not interested in AI. Then I said, what? Let me read it. Then, so yeah, it does make sense. Yes.
What I could make out of in reading two paragraph, like as a for myself and as a mother and as an educator, giving experiences through reading, through any other, just keep on changing the situation, circumstances, challenge yourself, helps me to understand more thoughts and widen myself. That is what helped in my life.
The third step is further.
To understand everything and come to try to understand from which, suppose I talk about religion and spirituality, understanding all school of thoughts and then coming and organizing in a way ki uh, all are what all are preaching have a one similar or a same kind of a meaning. That is what we are, that is
Yeah.
what I'm understanding.
The third step is about action. The third
Action.
about how will you lead your life? How will you act? What will you base your action on? What will you base your decisions on? The third step is for that. What you are talking about is important and it will form the basis for this third step. But it is still the second step. And yes, intellectually understanding what is the synthesis of all religions, where they turn into complements. You see, the contradictions.
A contradiction.
One religion says there is only this God and no other. And another religion says everything here is God. Yeah.
Okay.
Or there are several gods. Now, how do you turn them into complements? You have to find a way, na?
Find a way. Yeah.
You have to rise above. That itself is a, for the mind, it is a challenge. How to arrive at something and a position where both the people who are saying that, they should feel satisfied. They should feel not offended or not, misunderstood or anything.
And then how into action? That is still the piece I'm not.
The intellectual level. But the third point is for action. How will you act? Your own action.
How would I act? I will act with the same amount of suppose we are taking example of religion and spirituality. I will act with the same amount of respect to each and every space. No.
Not that. Your life as a mother, the values you give to your children, your life as a
Yeah.
professional, your relationship, your actions, your decisions, your solving of crises, all that, your life. So for that, if you want to progress, that's what the mother, because this is written in the framework of wanting to progress. If one just
So
wants to life of, the way routine things have been going on mechanically, then it is not, these chapters are not.
understood. But can you give me example how acting? How?
I'm thinking from what level should I give the example? Anybody, please help. I've gone a little blank at the moment.
So, when we're talking about the action, we come down, what I'm understanding is, and as per this, we come down after collection of all the viewpoints and understanding and assimilating and organizing. We come down to that organization based on one central idea. So the kind of life which the kind of idea which applies to you or which experiences have got to you. So that one central idea on the basis of which I will probably want to parent this way or would want to work this way or would want to dedicate my work. And that, so one central idea could be the highest, and then there could be smaller aims and ideas based on that. And so I'm trying each time to engage with all the viewpoints, but yet I am being guided by my central idea, which comes across to me because something makes sense with my experiences and with my learning and the organization that I have done and the kind of harmony I want to create.
Okay, I will give an example. Sorry, it came back to me, but I don't know why I'd gone blank for a minute. which I have given many times. It was very mundane. Again, some of you may have heard it. Very mundane. My central idea is I want to go to the hills and have a good time, right? Now, in my cupboard, there are lots of clothes. I know the temperature in the hills is going to require warm clothes. I'm obviously going to select clothes according to that, yeah, and leave out the other clothes. Leaving out other clothes does not mean I'm rejecting them, but I'm selecting what I need to fulfill my purpose. Next month, I have to go down south. It's going to be very hot there. My selection will change. So, my store of ideas or clothes is the same in both cases, but my selection is different. What is guiding the selection? My central idea, my aim. I mean, this is a very mundane example. Same way when you cook in the kitchen, etc. In everything, we apply it actually. But now to apply in one's life in higher things, like when you have been a parent, you have a certain concept. Like I remember Pooja saying, I don't know what she believes now, but in the early years when I used to meet her, I want to be a hands-on parent, a hands-on parent. So if I would tell her, why don't you take time for yourself? Why don't you go here? Why don't No, no, no. I have to be a hands-on parent, and she would do everything herself for her children. She would be there when they would come from school. She would, she really, that was something, it stuck in my mind because she really used to emphasize that. So in that phase, obviously she would be making choices for her life and for her children's life and for her household, where to go, where not to go, when to sacrifice her me time or her friends circle, etc., etc., based on this central idea. The moment the central idea changes, her choices would change. And same for all of us. And then you go to spiritual level, and then whatever your central idea is, whether you want to uh, manifest the spirit in matter and on body, so you work more with the body and you reject other things. Like there is a person who has made their mission that mother has said Sanskrit is language of the gods, so he only speaks, although he knows French, English, uh, various languages, he only speaks in Sanskrit, whether you understand it or not. He will speak in Sanskrit only. That he's made that his central. That is his central mission. Everything I will do for Sanskrit, to establish Sanskrit. So these are different examples.
Can I share one example, which is also again very mundane, but I've gone through this. See, these days there are so many contradictions regarding the politics of the whole thing, whatever is happening around us. Earlier, you sit in a group, they are talking about one thing. In the same group, another group is supporting, another is. It used to become so heated, and one didn't know whom to side and what does one do. And then one realizes, is my role to be in this conversation or just pray silently if I want it for my country in this case? So I actually started withdrawing from participating in the conversation and offering it to the mother. So I believe somewhere this central idea thing was working. But
Anything you make is based on some concept you have in your mind of how you want to lead your life. The only problem is, many a times, this moment I choose this, another moment I choose that, because I get swayed through contradictory thoughts in my head or through my vital. So if I have to live a cohesive, a consistent, and authentic life, then the exercise the mother is saying of coming, formulating a synthesis, seeing what all I believe in, where there are contradictions, how to harmonize them, how to go beyond and create a higher synthesis, and then come to your central idea, which is has that ability to synthesize everything. So that's a gradual process, like she says. In mundane,
Helpful. It helped me in, yeah.
when you go, some people are totally scattered. I mean, I don't think anybody in this group is like that. That's why maybe we have a problem understanding. But some people, even if they will go to the kitchen, they have to cook something sweet, for example. They will bring out the masaldan, this, that, 10 things and scatter them. And then say, Acha, nahi, isme se kya chahiye mujhe, acha, isme se kya chahiye. Because the mind is not organized. They have to do it concretely, then to see, okay, what do I need? Their mind doesn't have the ability to conceptualize. The mother says even people who talk to themselves, it is because their mind is not developed. They need to hear, they need to say the words out, hear themselves to be able to organize their mind, organize the thought. So sometimes I might not talk to myself, I might do calculations, by speaking, because in that aspect my mind is not well developed, or I might do something else by speaking, you know. So that is an indication that there I need to work more and develop it. Okay, so we will end here today. Thank you. Bye. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Hello, hello, everybody.
Hi. So mental education, we have had a couple of breaks here, but I think people may recall. Would anybody like to summarize what we have read till now? Anybody would like to do that? Ila, Nishi, Kirti, Pooja.
One
Okay.
thing is, I remember that there are stages in which mental development takes place, and mostly it happens in steps. So that was one thing I remember, and the other one was I remember is about so which we know, but I thought it was explained really beautifully about the and we had a conversation around it also, which was the difference between just memorizing it versus understanding it, and the importance of understanding it was the other thing that was explained really beautifully. In fact, I used it with a couple of parents and teachers last week, those particular lines. And yeah.
Does anybody remember the 5 stages mother speaks about in development of the brain, the mind? Yes, Kirti?
I note them down to be systematic. First was the capacity of expansion and widening.
No, that's the second. So I always do this, you start with this, like bring everything together, the concentration,
Concentration.
then like a flower opening, from the bud stage to the flower, the expansion and widening. And then around you have to organize the central idea. The organization takes place around that. That's the third. Yeah.
Then we have to have a control over our thoughts
Mm,
to reject what not to have.
mm.
And the silence, the mental silence.
So 5 steps. And we studied 3 of them. We studied about the power of concentration, capacity of attention. Second was expansion, widening, complexity, and richness. All these elements. And then organizing around a central idea, a higher ideal, or a supremely luminous idea that will serve as a guide in life. And mother spoke about how every day to spend time uh, looking at, whether your day or your thoughts, your ideas, your responses, and to see whether whatever the central idea of your life is, what you did that day, what you thought, what you said, any new ideas you were introduced to, organize them around the central idea, and the ones that are not in harmony, to reject them and to give every idea its due place. But the guiding light is the your central idea. And it can be, we discussed, it can be in a small project, it could be for your entire life, whatever, at various levels. And it is evolutionary. It is not static. It grows as you grow, changes as you change. And yet, something is essential which remains the same perhaps over decades, and which comes from your very reason of being, why you are born on earth in this life. So all that we have read, now I think we have to go to the last two phases here. So let's start with the one para before and read these two paras together. Okay. Who would like to start? Anybody?
I will read it.
Okay.
It goes without saying that this work of organization cannot be done once and for all. The mind, if it is to keep its vigor and youth, must progress constantly, revise its notion in the light of new knowledge, enlarge its framework to include fresh notions, and constantly reclassify and reorganize its thoughts so that each of them may find its true place in relation to the others and the whole remains harmonious and orderly. All that just has been said concerns the speculative mind, the mind that learns. But learning is only one aspect of mental activity. The other, which is at least equally important, is the constructive faculty, the capacity to form and thus prepare action. This very important part of mental activity has rarely been the subject of any special study or discipline. Only those who want, for some reason, to exercise a strict control over their mental activities think of observing and disciplining this faculty of formation. And as soon as they try it, they have to face difficulties so great that they appear almost insurmountable.
So the first para we had already read and we discussed also, and I summarized also. It is mainly, now we are getting into out of the 5 phases, the first 3 are speculative mind, the mind that learns. And then she talks about the formative capacity, the constructive faculty, which is hardly ever taken up. And
So the first 3 stages are about the mind that learns.
yes, yes,
The ways.
yes, the concentration and the widening and the organization, central idea, right? So it's interesting if you read Sri Aurobindo's chapter on mental education, where he talks of training of the mental faculties, then the first few faculties he has spoken of, you can find correlation, like concentration, observation, reasoning, memory, judgment. All these are more to do with the mind that learns. So what is any example of the formative faculties which have not really been systematically developed? And some people, when they try, they face such difficulties that they appear almost insurmountable. So one of the faculty that comes to mind is imagination. Imagination creates, and yet most often imagination is, I mean, for most people, because of various factors to do with the vital fears and insecurities, it takes a negative turn. like with BLED students, we face this problem of overthinking. Everybody talks of overthinking. It is basically this imagination where the mind is refuses, imagines various outcomes which are not to its liking, which are based on fear and doubt and lack of confidence and insecurities, etc., etc. So that is one, although there are others also, I'm sure, but to my mind, that is one which comes when we think of formative, what forms, what creates faculty of the mind. Shall we read ahead and maybe it will become more clear? Yeah. Who wants to take up the next para? This one.
I can.
Okay, Ila.
Um, I'm just trying to make it. Can you bring the screen down a bit so I can expand my screen? Okay. Yeah, thanks. And yet, control over this formative activity of the mind is one of the most important aspects of self education. One can say that without it, no mental mastery is possible. As far as study is concerned, all ideas are acceptable and should be included in the synthesis, whose very function is to become more and more rich and complex. But where action is concerned, it is just the opposite. The ideas that are accepted for translation into action should be strictly controlled, and only those that agree with the general trend of the central idea of forming the basis of the mental synthesis should be permitted to express themselves in action. This means that every thought entering the mental consciousness should be set before the central idea. If it finds a logical place among the thoughts already grouped, it will be admitted into the synthesis. If not, it will be rejected so that it can have no influence on the action. This work of mental purification should be done very regularly in order to secure a complete control over one's actions.
Did we read this also?
I don't think so.
Okay. Anyway, doesn't matter. We can read it again. Because in the third thing, in the third stage, so here it is more of an intellectual ordering, the third step, organizing around a central idea. Now, it is, in some ways, it sounds similar to that, and yet it is when it comes to action. So, as far as thinking is concerned, when we think philosophically, we say all religions are good, all philosophies are good. There is some truth in every philosophy, every religion, etc., etc. But when it comes to action, then we have to see what is our central idea, what is our guiding principle of life, and what is in harmony with that, and only allow that to express itself in action. So here the mother is making a distinction between a mental synthesis which is rich, wide, complex, and does not reject, does not create these divisions between good, bad, and that kind of isms. It doesn't create. And yet, when it comes to action, then one has to select and one has to also reject. And rejection is because she says that it should not influence the action at all. Now, to take a very simple example, I'm full of aspiration one day, and I feel the aspiration and all the ideas which are coming in my mind about a particular project are all, making me feel closer and closer to myself, to the mother, everything, and I feel full of enthusiasm to do it. And then suddenly an idea or somebody says something, or somehow my own mind suggests a little doubt, am I being practical? Am I being this? Am I being that? And suddenly that idea, before I know, has toppled and kind of eaten away a bit of my enthusiasm, at least, if not all of it. Often we see this happening. If you observe ourselves, we will see this kind of movement happening. And it may be that it becomes very difficult, actually, because I'm speaking from experience. If you have a mind that is in many ways practical. It thinks of, is it doable? Is it feasible? Or are we just making fanciful, dreams which will not materialize? You, that although at one level that faculty is important, and at another it becomes a roadblock. It becomes something which prevents you from manifesting the idea, believing in the idea, giving it all, etc., etc. So everybody might have their own peculiar bent, and everybody has to reflect and see how this happens between, like that T.S. Eliot's poem, between the what? Between the something idea and the action falls the shadow, the hollow man, that poem. It is like that, between the thought and the action falls the shadow. So, what creates the shadow where action does not get manifested? And that's where the mother is pointing out that if there is a conflict between the central idea and other ideas, or even a one single idea that you have allowed to enter into your synthesis, which does not really sit there, then the action becomes is challenged. Any thoughts? Anything to share from your own
Sounds
experience?
very difficult to do.
Sorry, Ila?
It sounds very difficult to do.
It is. That's why she's saying that it is hardly, it seems insurmountable when people start to attempt. First of all, this is not part of the education. And when one tries to do it, it almost seems insurmountable. And yet it is so important.
I can see the importance of it, but I mean, for example, if we were to take anything, any situation, and if we think about it, we think of many different aspects of it. Now, if we have to then take everything that works with whatever the central idea of that thought was, it's very difficult to segregate what stays and what should be discarded, because everything that we thought about is some aspect, right? So there is some kind of a connection anyway. So to be able to have that level of discrimination, to know that yes, this is the one which really resonates with the big idea and this is the one which does not, I think that would be very tough to do, especially if it's something relating to oneself. If it is relating to someone else, then at least someone, there'd be a certain level of objectivity. But if it's relating to you, I mean, I would think that would be extremely difficult for that reason.
Difficulty is not posed by the mind. The moment you use these two words, objective and subjective, where is the subjectivity coming from? It
From,
comes from the vital,
yeah.
the preferences, the desires, etc.
No,
Or
even
suppose the mind's own biases.
even intellectually, even intellectually, it's very difficult for the mind to separate, I feel,
Hmm.
all these various little ideas that, see, what are the ideas that one has? It's not that one has just got some random number of ideas, chucked them in and said, okay, which of these are close to my ideal or whatever I'm thinking about. These are all ideas which have been created from that central thought in some way. So it's some aspect or some reflection of that central idea in some way. Some are sort of more connected and some are less. So that ability to discriminate is not, I don't know whether it's a vital thing, maybe to some extent, but definitely intellectual. And intellectually also, it would be difficult to separate them out, right?
I'm not saying the ability is vital, the ability is mental only. But the roadblock, a lot of roadblocks are to do with the vital. But having said that, let me also remind, that's why right at the beginning, the mother has said there is a sequence to it. In rare individuals, it may happen simultaneously. Because what happens when there is a sequence? If you think of the first step only, the concentration, how many of us really have a developed concentration? And when I say that, I'm using it in the way Sri Aurobindo, the mother, have explained. Having a mastery over something is different from being able to use something once in a while. So, like The connection between interest and concentration, everybody knows that if I'm interested in something, chances are I'll be concentrated. Even there, if there is a lot of distraction around me, I may find it difficult to concentrate. Or if my body is uncomfortable, if the electricity goes off, I'm sweating, I might find difficult to concentrate on what I'm interested in, or there is a headache, etc. So I'm not a master even of to that level that my concentration can be so extreme that nothing else matters to me. I'm not conscious of anything else, like the Arjun and that eye of the fish, that kind of a thing. Then next comes being also concentrated on things which I have not chosen, yet I have to do. The moment I say I need to concentrate, there the concentration is fully there. To that extent, first of all, the first extent is also not achieved. So there are many levels. So when the mother is talking about, we haven't even achieved the first step, actually, if you look at it. We are just conversant with it. We can do a bit of it. We can manage. Same way. So imagine a mind which is trained to really concentrate against all odds, to concentrate at will on anything. Then comes the widening. When that laser focus has been developed, then that same laser focus has to include, enhance, and include everything. There also, that richness, complexity, we have some of it. We might also feel proud that how tolerant we are, how understanding we are, how inclusive we are. And yet, if we look at the whole range, there might still be many, many things we still have to do. So imagine a mind which has developed that kind of concentration, then come to that wideness. I think the very cells of the mind will change in the process, first of all. Then comes that organizing around a central idea, discovering the central idea. That is discernment, deciding it. So already the mind has developed to a large extent. So by the time one comes to this fourth stage, one is already sitting somewhere else at another level of consciousness. And from there, to be able to discern, to be able to see the thoughts which are coming, identify them, classify them, organize them, say, this I accept, this I do not. Sometimes we do it instinctively. Sometimes something in our consciousness rejects. Somebody saying something, and it's somewhere we might not have even formulated the central idea for ourselves, but somewhere it creates a disharmony in us, or it creates a pain in us, or it makes us very uncomfortable what the other person is saying. If we were to step back and analyze it, maybe we will come to that it is in contradiction to the truth of our being. And that's why we are feeling uncomfortable. So sometimes we do it instinctively when there is a kind of a threat like that. But to do it consciously, deliberately, systematically, that is what is being talked about here. And that's why the mother says it's almost insurmountable. But if one were going through these stages step by step by step, then I think that kind of mind would have a different character. And yeah, that's why these last two steps she has put in a for a great a mind which is already has developed to a very large extent. That is how I understand it. So she says this work of mental purification should be done very regularly in order to secure. So, not just when we are challenged or we suddenly have something to achieve, but it must become a habit every day to organize it. Yes, Sagarika.
What does it mean, mental purification?
So, purification is that there is no mixture of ideas. You have a central idea which is like a light shining in your being, and you allow only the thoughts and the ideas which are in harmony with it to enter you. then your synthesis, the synthesis you have achieved at the level of the mind, remains pure, undisturbed, harmonious. But the moment you allow a contradictory idea, a destructive idea, which destroys your synthesis, see, everything is relative to your synthesis. The same idea might be very welcome to another person, it might be in harmony with their central idea. So, that you have to always keep in mind. It is not black and white like that. That this idea is bad, it's bad for everyone. No, it is your central idea and what is in harmony with it. So that is what is purification. Every day to go over one's thoughts to see, is everything helping you move towards your aim, towards your central idea, or are there thoughts which are, taking away from that, or making you move in the opposite direction or at another angle? Yeah, it's very difficult to do. That's very true. Anybody else wants to say anything, share anything? Pooja, anything from you?
No, not really. I'll have to go through the recording again. I'm getting a little distracted by the bells ringing at this hour, having to rush every minute.
One. The first phase, consideration.
Yeah. So I'll be going through the whole thing again. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's carry on. Who wants to read next? This paragraph? Yes, Kirti, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll read. Before that, just one thing I was wondering. Silence, mental silence, she's put it as the last stage, no? But then silence is needed even while we are working on our selves mentally or vitally, isn't it?
That's the poise of the being. That's a different silence. When she speaks of mental silence, it's different, which we will read.
Okay. For this purpose, it is good to set apart some time every day when one can quietly go over one's thoughts and put one's synthesis in order. Once the habit is acquired, you can maintain control over your thoughts even during work and action, allowing only those which are useful for what you are doing to come to the surface, particularly if you have continued to cultivate the power of concentration and attention. Only the thoughts that are needed will be allowed to enter the active external consciousness, and they then become all the more dynamic and effective. And if in the intensity of concentration, it becomes necessary not to think at all mental vibration can be stilled and an almost total silence secured. In this silence, one can gradually open to the higher regions of the mind and learn to record the inspirations that come from there.
Anybody wants to say anything?
So who knows how to do this kind of stuff?
I remember this is a shift which has happened only very recently for me. Very recently, meaning the last maybe 4, 5 years or 5, 6 years. I noticed. I always had a very noisy mind, very, very noisy. And Amita would always point that out to me. My physical mind being very active. Physical mind is what Sri Aurobindo has uh, described as the mind which is, busy with little physical details. It is also the mind which kind of makes you, after you come out of a room, you think again, oh, did I switch off the light? You go back and check. Or a song keeps repeating in your brain, or a thought keeps repeating in your brain, etc., etc. Like a groove, the physical mind. But it is also mind then which makes you think of practical things and, you know, all the nitty gritties of organization and things like that. So, which would mean when I say noisy, that if I'm doing one thing, suppose I'm working on the journal or I'm planning for a workshop, at the same time, there'll be other thoughts going on in my head, you know, of the home or of some other work, etc. I've noticed that in the last few years, that has stopped happening. And if I'm busy with something, I kind of forget about the other things. And I'm just thinking of that thing. It still happens, especially when I do physical exercise in the morning. Most of the times, the mind is quiet. Sometimes, suddenly, you know, the vital gives a suggestion. Oh, I should check that recipe or what was written there. Or, and then I feel like stopping the exercise and going immediately and doing that. And then I have to pull myself back. But that is also because I spontaneously do not like to exercise. So any excuse to get out of it and look at something else. So then these days I'm trying, no, whatever comes, even if it is to check the time, no, I will not. You know, just focus on the body, just think of the body, etc., etc. So it's at a very simple level, but that's what I'm noticing that, yeah. I'm sure these kind of things happen with all of you also.
Yeah, but I mean the level, um, at least the little that I've understood about what she's saying, it sounds so it sounds she's putting it down neatly, like, okay, so you do this and you do this and you do this, but it isn't actually that possible to do. Like, for example, she said set apart some time to go over your thoughts and put your synthesis in order, which means that you have to understand what you've done through the day with your mind. Then you organize that, you put it in order. So once you know how to think in a way and how to organize your thoughts, then that'll become a habit. But that is extremely difficult to do. I mean, she makes it sound very like, okay, so tie your shoelaces, put on your shoes, go for your walk. But it's actually very, very difficult to do. So that's what I was asking, how can you actually one thing is to sit down, the other thing is to think about your day, and the third thing is to think about the synthesis that you have made, and then structure your thought and understand what you've done with you know with your thought and how you've structured it. I think that's really difficult to do. I mean, I don't know who does it.
Well, I used to do it for quite a few years,
Wow.
initially when I was living in GK, that's ages ago. And I'm sure many people do. I know Amita does, and I'm sure many other people do. There's a very beautiful exercise which describes this process, which is to be found in the mother's words, but in the compilation, Living Within also. No, Living Within, yeah. At the end, there are these exercises for psychological self mastery. It is self observation and self organization. That's how they've titled it. These are the mother's words. And, interestingly, see, the thing is, she's talking of the mind. Normally, we think of the mind here, at the head, that from here we have to operate. But actually, it is not that. It is the mental consciousness which is present everywhere. So, this synthesis is not like a dry analytical synthesis, now like the management gurus would do, you know, the SWOT analysis and that analysis. Although those are also exercises which train the brain to start thinking like this. But it is more from the consciousness. And then there is no dryness and things kind of fall into place. So, in that exercise, she talks about, whatever your central idea is, your ideal for your life is, or if it is for a shorter time, doesn't matter the duration. But in the evening, at night, you kind of meditate and come in touch again with that idea. And when you come in touch with the idea, you actually don't come in touch, at least that's my experience, you don't come in touch here in the brain. The brain may have recollection of it, but the coming in touch with happens at the heart center, not the vital, the inner, at the inner heart center. And the consciousness kind of focuses on that idea. And then if that idea was formed to a certain aspiration, you it puts you back in that mode of aspiration. You again start feeling that meditative connectedness with the, whether the divine or with your own psychic being or whatever, and you again feel that meditative poise of the being. And then in front of that, you just turn your consciousness that, okay, I want to offer to you whatever happened today. And don't think about it. What did I do at 9? What did I do at 10? No. Just let the images roll. Let them come spontaneously, rise spontaneously in your consciousness. And you will see that certain things, this is why I'm saying what she has described, that certain things kind of pass by without throwing any shadow. It's like there's a huge screen in front of you, a cinema going on, and some things will pass by without throwing a shadow, and some will throw a shadow. Now, some people might see the shadow, some people might experience an inner unease somewhere in their body, they might feel a discomfort, or so everybody has a different way how they experience it, whether they are, they are visionary people who see visions, or they hear something, or they sense something. So whatever, it will create some kind of a disharmony in your being when you remember that conversation, or that sentence comes to you, or your action comes to you. Then you pay attention to it and you just offer it. There is no judgment. You just offer it to the light. And when I used to do this, I don't know, now I'm just so lazy, I'm just so not like a sadhak these days, these many years, that I would see that whatever I would write in the journal, if after 10 days I were to read my journal, I would not recognize that this existed in me. It was gone completely. It had that power. And the mother has said if you do it consistently for 6 months, continuously, you will be a changed person. So it is a very powerful exercise. Yeah, Ila.
But just taking your own story, further down, would you say that from the time that you were practicing then, as a sadhak, say, to now, you were practicing much more then. You were seeing many more changes then. But now, not doing all that, you're still progressing and in fact, you're probably in a better place now than you were 30 years ago or whenever you were a
So
sadhak.
even if we do nothing, we will progress. Progress will happen. I mean,
But
some
the
people do
question
it
is
less,
speed of progress, right? So, I mean, if you do all these things, then you should be progressing much quicker.
yes.
But
If
do
I
you,
start doing it again, then with all the maturity and experience and whatever has come over the years, the results will be even more powerful. And if I had been doing it consistently, maybe I don't know where I would be in my inner journey. So,
chanting Om quietly on a mountaintop?
so that is the thing. So the answers are all there. If you read the mother's writings, in various places, you will come across where in this place she's talking like mental education. But actually, these are the same ideas. Here they are organized for teachers to work upon in a systematic fashion with the children, and of course, first with themselves. But ideas are the same. So here, Kirti, she has come in the second part of this paragraph which you read, she has come to the silence part also, that if in the intensity of concentration it becomes necessary not to think at all mental vibration can be stilled and an almost total silence secured. And when that silence is there, one can gradually open to the higher regions of the mind and learn to record the inspirations that come from there. Then it is at this stage that the mind becomes an instrument of the divine, not before that. Because then whatever comes from the higher regions, and the mind is an organized channel to receive it in a pure fashion without distorting it and transmitting it, whether through writing, whether through words, whatever. And this is the stage which Sri Aurobindo operated from after his experience with Vishnu Bhaskar Lele. He said all thought stopped, and all his life and all his books have been written like this, from the silent mind, not from thinking mind. Pooja, would you like to read this paragraph?
Sure. But even before reaching this point, silence in itself is supremely useful because in most people who have a somewhat developed and active mind, the mind is never at rest. During the day, its activity is kept under a certain control, but at night, during the sleep of the body, the control of the waking state is almost completely removed, and the mind indulges in activities which are sometimes excessive and often incoherent. This creates a great stress, which leads to fatigue and the diminution of the intellectual faculties. Want me to read further?
No, I want to ask if anybody has anything to say or it's completely clear. So this is again what Kirti was saying, silence is necessary even before. That's what the mother is saying. But that's a different kind of silence. Yeah, it is just that the mind's activity is kept under control. So
I think this is a very, very apt paragraph because most often we see people in this stage, like sometimes I myself is in this state, then too much activity has happened, then and many people who working uh, with lots of responsibilities and too much stress often talk about this.
yeah, and that to some extent one is still aware of because that's in the waking consciousness. But during the sleep, and that's why the mother has spoken in various places about how to sleep, what to do before sleeping, how to be conscious in your sleep, how to become aware of your dreams, how to take control of your dreams, be the creator of your, uh, dreams or visiting the other worlds and all that kind of a thing, and not to go into the inconscient when you sleep. It is when we go into the inconscient that when we wake up, we feel heavy and tamasic and lazy, and dull. The consciousness gets dull. Whereas when you sleep consciously, even a 15-20 minute sleep can refresh you. Uh, so she has spoken in other places a lot about that. So here she's just saying that the control when we sleep, control is removed, completely removed, almost completely removed. Mind indulges in activities which are sometimes excessive and often incoherent. So that's why we are unconscious of our dreams, but there are dreams and they are all hodgepodge and mixed and whatever we remember fragments. They make no sense. There are all kinds of things coming up, which during the day we had kind of controlled and may not be from that day, maybe from years gone by and various things. All of us know this very well. So yeah, this creates a great stress. So this activity of the night itself creates a great stress, which leads to fatigue and the diminution of the intellectual faculty. So at night, those 8 hours of one third of our lives, what is happening, which we are not aware of and not controlling at all, that is kind of eating away at our intellectual. Whatever progress we have made during the day, part of it is destroyed at night. Yeah, Pooja, you can read this para also.
The fact is that, like all the other parts of the human being, the mind too needs rest, and it will not have this rest unless we know how to provide it. The art of resting one's mind is something to be acquired. Changing one's mental activity is certainly one way of resting, but the greatest possible rest is silence. And as far as the mental faculties are concerned, a few minutes passed in the calm of silence are a more effective rest than hours of sleep.
Yeah. So relaxing meaning doesn't mean watching TV and all, but she says change of mental activity. So just like in the body, if you use certain muscles, next day you use some other muscles. So it rests the first day's muscles. The same way with the mind, that you are doing a certain kind of mental work. If you want to rest, after some time you change your work so that it's a different part of your mind that starts acting while the first part gets rest. And then she says the best is silence, to spend time whether watching nature, meditating, listening to music, painting, whatever works for each one. Few minutes passed in the calm of silence are a more effective rest than hours of sleep for the mind. Sagarika, please end with this paragraph.
Yes. When one has learned to silence the mind at will and to concentrate it in receptive silence, then there will be no problem that cannot be solved, no mental difficulty whose solution cannot be found. When it is agitated, thought becomes confused and important. In an attentive tranquility, the light can manifest itself and open up new horizons to man's capacity. Bulletin, November 1951.
So you see, this is the aim of mental education, what she says at the end, to make the mind ready to be receptive. But a confused mind, a disorganized mind, cannot be receptive. So all the other steps have to be done. Many people make this mistake in Sri Aurobindonian circles also. A lot of people make this mistake that spirituality means don't cultivate the mind. Mind spoils things. Mind
Sorry,
analyzes sex.
Anadi, what you said spirituality means? I could not hear you.
People think in people who are not in integral yoga, they to think like that in any case, except the Gyan yogis. But many people in, I'm saying even in the Sri Aurobindonian circles, feel that the mind has to be subjugated. There's no need to develop the mind. Just bhakti and just devotion is enough. But that's not the case in integral yoga. Devotion is very important, but developing the mind is equally important. And also the physical, of course, all that kind of thing. So that's why the mother has written about mental education. So unless you develop the mind, you cannot, very simply, those of you who have read The Prophet, there's such a beautiful line in there by Khalil Gibran, that when you have to give a gift to your beloved, unless you make it perfect, what will you offer? So it is like that. We have been given a mind by the divine. If we don't perfect it, what are we going to surrender or to offer? Some garbage. So first it has to be developed beautifully and then it has to be surrendered. Be made receptive to the divine. So yes, Sila.
I like the last two lines actually. There's a word here, I mean, a small phrase which is two words, which I think, I mean, I would certainly like to, put up on my all my walls, is attentive tranquility. I think that's such it's such a powerful phrase. To be attentive but tranquil is actually, I think, something that I would certainly love to cultivate. If I could be attentive and tranquil, what a wonderful combination of words, as opposed to, agitated or confused. Which, and I completely agree. I think that when your mind is agitated, your mind is impotent. You can't think of anything. You're completely distracted. You're all over the place. But when you're attentively tranquil, you can absorb so much. You can really actually be very much in the moment. So I think these are two wonderful things that I will um, keep.
Because tranquility is generally associated with passivity. And here she's saying, just like she speaks of dynamic meditation, you know, so not a passive meditation, but a dynamic meditation. Being the attentive tranquility. True. So, anything to share, discuss on mental education chapter? There is only one talk which I have found on mental education, which we will take up next time. Of course, there are lots of other writings by the mother, even in this volume 12, like Correct Judgment. There is an article she's written called Correct Judgment. There is another one where she's written Concentration and Dispersion. Another one, Energy Inexhaustible. These kind of things are there. And of course, Sri Aurobindo has written a lot on mental education, on training of the mental faculties, training of the logical faculty. He's written. So I can give you the references. Quite a few of you already know the references. So those are there. But we will take up just this one talk by the mother next time on mental education. And then we will move to psychic and spiritual so that we have the whole framework of integral education. And then if we want to go deeper or further into anything, we can look at that later.
I was thinking that time you were saying if we could have some more things to add to the constructive faculty, the capacity to form and thus prepare action.
Yeah.
I was also thinking how, along with imagination, it has a little bit of imagination also in it, but a lot of problem solving skills can be developed for children, not just for children, not even for us, but specifically for children, because we usually ask them to think in a box and solve the problem or solve whatever it is the way we would want to do it, because we've achieved that mastery in doing it, or it's easier to do it like that. And we often, like supposing a child spilled milk or something, and we would just say isko aise karo, and or we would just step into hurry. But if we just tell the child to clean it, and maybe they use their own ways of doing it, and if it doesn't work, then we can just tell them, okay, this didn't work, or try another way. Anything, even when they are making, right from small things to big projects to anything, we can especially around practical things, help them solve problems by giving them small cues and telling them to think themselves.
So when you said out of the box, because you said out of the box, so when you said spilled milk, of course, out of the boxes, cleaning is not the only option. There are
Yeah,
many.
that's it, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, but they can't lick it.
of course, you can.
Sagarika's catties would help there.
I know a child who will lick it up. So anyway, but there was something I wanted to say to Ila. Now I'm forgetting it because of what she had said. And she
Please
talked
send it to me whenever you remember it.
okay, because the question you had raised that it's so difficult to, organize the ideas and this and that. It was regarding that something had come to my mind. I'll try and recall it. Okay. Okay, then. See you next
All
time.
right. Bye-bye.